Just when I thought I couldn't love Jim from The Office anymore, he goes and does this. A Quiet Place is a 2018 horror sci-fi film directed and written by John Krasinski. The original script was written by Scott Beck and Ryan Woods, but John Krasinski went in there and tweaked a lot of stuff to make it more identifiable with a family and what they would do in this type of situation. It stars John Krasinski, his wife Emily Blunt, as well as newcomers Millicent Simmons and Noah Toop. The musical score is by Marco Beltrami, and the visual effects were by ILM. So there was a huge amount of hype around this film once it came out. All of these people went and saw it and talked about how fantastic it was. I knew it kind of would be because I heard a lot of things about it when it was in production, and then when I saw the first trailer, I watched about half the trailer and stopped it because it was so good I didn't want to spoil anything else. Luckily, up until today, I've been able to avoid all spoilers except for one, and don't worry, in this review I won't spoil anything for you. So the story has Earth being invaded by creatures that are attracted to sound, and the sound bothers them so much that whatever makes that noise they have to destroy. Now they don't say if they're alien or they are subterranean or anything of that nature, and I like that they keep it vague. All you know is that there is this family, they have a deaf daughter, so they know sign language, so they kind of have an advantage over the rest of humanity in that they can speak to each other without making a sound. So the film basically pits this family's survival instincts against the creature's ability to pick up sound. Right away, I noticed that the movie was subverting a lot of the expectations and tropes that come along with the horror genre. You see the family's journey unfolding before your eyes and all the things that they go through, and the toll that it takes on them physically and emotionally, including the kids, or more like especially the kids. It brilliantly tackles a lot of complex issues like safety, accountability, parenthood, blame, loss, and so much more. And it does so with an intimate story of survival in a world full of devastation. So as strong as the premise and the story are, so much so that a bunch of movies have copied it within the year that it's been out, do the visuals actually stack up to this grand vision that they had? There are a lot of fantastic shots in this movie. You have tons of wide shots to show isolation and devastation and all those things that come along with basically an apocalypse. But on the flip side, you get a lot of close-ups and tight shots that show that detail, but more importantly, they show a lot of things with the characters, with the people themselves. Given the fact that there is almost no dialogue in this film, everything is conveyed through the eyes and the faces and the hand motions of the characters. So the camera does a lot of pushing in on key points in the film, and you see a lot of emotions conveyed through their performances. So the cinematography and the performances come together pretty brilliantly. But unlike most of the films who've copied this formula since this movie came out, it's not mostly just static shots. There are a lot of dynamic camera movements. Every shot is deliberate and complements whatever motion or emotions are happening on screen. All of the lighting in the movie is brilliantly done, whether it be the stuff that is in the film itself as part of the production design, which is brilliant by the way, or the way that they lit the actual shots themselves. There's nothing distracting. So even though there's probably a ton of lights all around lighting up this whole set, it doesn't feel like there are any. The editing is solid from start to finish. It's never boring. It's never too flashy. It's just right. As much as I dislike CGI creatures in horror films, I actually enjoyed the one in this one. It has like a heft and a weight to it, and its movements don't look the same as what you've seen in a lot of other movies. It feels real. It moves real. So of course, this being a movie about creatures that are attracted to sound, let's talk about it. The sound design, mixing, and editing of sound in this film are all amazing. I don't understand how this movie didn't win the Oscar for either editing or mixing. It just got robbed. I think most Academy voters aren't very savvy when it comes to sound design or editing or mixing or whatever, because this film, it's some of the best that I've seen since Jurassic Park. But of course, they went with very obvious choices like Bohemian Rhapsody. There is a strong musical score in this film, but it's used very sparingly. It only happens during key moments, whether it be tense action or horror, and that's when it gets really ominous and you have these drones and cellos and really deep dissonant bass chords. But at the same time, you also have these really nice, warm piano sounds that go with the emotional parts and the characters. So the score is just awesome. There's only one licensed song used throughout the entire film, and I thought it was a great touch when they used it because it's actually one of my favorite songs ever. I'd put my little iPod mini on, I'd put my headphones on, and I would mow the lawn to Harvest Moon. So bonus points for using a Neil Young song. Neil Young is a legend. But enough about the music, let's talk about the actual sounds and the sound design. Every sound in this movie is a potential death, so it is given so much more weight than it would have in any other film, even the other movies that copied it. So of course the daughter in the movie, Regan, she is deaf, so when it switches to her perspective, it is dead quiet. You barely hear anything, it's just a little bit of muffled sound, but that's it. And I think that is one of the scariest parts of the film. When you see the creature, when you hear the creature, it is really terrifying. The sounds that they created for it were really good. It's not super loud, it's not too quiet, you know, it's very menacing. So again, sound design, editing, and mixing is some of the best that I've seen in years. Almost every single movie that's come out like this in the last decade or more always starts the same way. And it's those damn news clips to show you what happened at the beginning of the apocalypse up until the point where we're at in the movie. And this doesn't fall prey to that. It does its own thing. And I was glad about that. You just get a bunch of really cool static shots of the town and the countryside and everything else to show you that humanity is just gone. Everything in this movie is just tailored towards world building. You know, it's definitely one of those films that finally just, it knows you have to show, not tell. And it does that throughout the whole movie brilliantly. As a matter of fact, I definitely want to watch this a second time so I can notice more of those little details that were all over the place. Yes, you have some of the more obvious stuff like sign language, bare feet, but there are other little things like newspapers flapping in the wind with headlines on them. And there's stuff that, are on these things that the family keeps track of. All of those things matter, and all of them really mean something to this world. After the opening of the film, I really like that they show what the family does, not only to just keep occupied, but also to make sure that their place is as quiet as possible. All of the performances also help sell this world brilliantly. Even the kids' performances in this movie are kick-ass. Kid actors can be really hit or miss, but both of them, not only do they show a great emotional range, sadness and crying, but also fear, and it just comes across as authentic. And that's one of the things I've heard a lot about this movie, is that the opening 30 minutes or so are too slow. That couldn't be any further from the truth. The whole point of the opening of this film is to show you something that happens with the family and then how they deal with it, and also to get you really, really involved with them and really to identify with them and to just feel like you're part of their journey. That's very, very important to any movie, but it's really important to this film because later on, when certain things happen, they wouldn't have that same impact. Because there's almost no dialogue in this movie, the few times that they do have exposition so that the audience, maybe the ones who aren't too clever, could pick up on certain things, they do it in a natural way to where it's like one of the family members talking to somebody else about things that have happened, or what works and what doesn't work. They really clear up the rules of this world. And of course, when you're watching horror movies, rules matter because you have to know what and what not to do around the creature, and it really helps you identify with if somebody screws up or if they're safe or whatever. So rules are very important, and in this film they actually follow that. The film really focuses on the family, but you do see certain signs of other people along the way. One, to let you know that humanity is still there and that they do care about one another, but also there are a few things that you see that make you worry or make you realize that even though these creatures are here, humanity is also still something that you have to worry about, which makes sense because there's always going to be crazy people or raiders or people who are just desperate. Yes, the family are all important characters, but the farm, the place where they live, is also a very important character. And just like the family dynamic, they really flushed out all of the details of this farm. They actually went to this place and they planted corn and built up silos well ahead of production so that when production happened, everything would look real. It would look like that it was a lived-in place. And that's the thing, this movie just oozes authenticity. You have an actual married couple playing a married couple. You have a deaf girl played by a deaf girl who not only acted in the film, but her and her translator were also on set to make sure that the way that people signed and the way that they moved and did certain things and how they would behave is all spot on. So for me, this is one of the more authentic horror films I've seen in a long time, and it really knows how to build that world up and build up your connection to the characters. There are a few jump scares in this movie, and every single one of them is deserved and it is earned, because every moment of this film that is full of that quiet and everything else, it is tension building. Yes, you have a couple moments where you get to breathe and enjoy the family and, you know, what they're doing together, but the overwhelming majority of this film is just tension, tension, tension. But that tension and those jump scares wouldn't matter if the creature sucked, because so many horror movies these days, the creature just sucks ass. But I'm happy to say that the creatures in this movie are not only unique, they are menacing, they do have a weight to them, they do convince you, they do get you scared, you do get, you know, fearful for the characters. So yes, the movie is scary. With all that being said, let's get to my summary and the score.
And now the moment we've all been waiting for is here.
We're out of time.
It's Judgment Day.
This is a very sincere, emotionally grounded horror film. It has fantastic characters, brilliant performances, and amazing world building. Unfortunately, like most horror films, it doesn't quite stick the landing. There are 3 points in the movie that are there for tension and progression and that kind of thing, and I just couldn't quite get on board with them. These 3 things aren't as bad as most of the horror films that I've seen recently, but they weren't small enough that I could let them go. They really kind of stuck with me. Everybody in the film does everything really correct. They could have done something in a different way to make these creatures come or make something bad happen without it sticking out so much. It sticks out like a sore thumb compared to the rest of the movie. And some of the things that happen at the end, they're definitely avoidable. They didn't have to do it that way. You know, you have these scary moments and emotional moments and all that stuff, and I did enjoy them, but at the same time, I was just like, oh, you were so close, man. Even given those issues, this is still one of my favorite overall horror movies that I've seen in quite some time, and I highly recommend that you watch it, and that's why I'm giving A Quiet Place a 7 out of 10.